Very good afternoon. I'm Dr. S.P. Bhanu Prashant, Professor in the Department of Medical Electronics, BMS College of Engineering, giving a demonstration of the basic linear applications of op-amps in this practical kind of a session. I'm going to demonstrate 5 to 6 different experiments which typically revolve around the linear applications like the amplifier circuits or the filter circuits, the instrumentation amplifier, the voltage to current converter and things like that. So welcome to this particular demonstration. As a first experiment, I'm making a basic amplifier setups. One is an inverting amplifier and the other is a non-inverting amplifier and the third is a simple buffer circuit. We know that it's very easy to make the inverting amplifier which uses only an RF and an R1, producing a V0 is equals to minus of RF by R1 into Vin, and because of the negative sign we say it's an inverting configuration, so there will be an 180-degree phase shift between the input and the output. To make the phase shift very clear, though I have shown the DC voltage here in the demonstration now, I'll be using an AC signal from a function generator that is given here so that I can easily demonstrate the difference between the inverting and the non-inverting terminal and the kind of phase shift it is going to show. Then you know the wonderful application of the non-inverting amplifier, which is as a simple buffer or a voltage follower which produces V0 is equals to Vin, and as we learned in the theory class, it has got an input impedance that is Ri into 1 plus A beta that will run into giga ohms, and we'll have R0 is equals to or R0 feedback is equals to R0 divided by 1 plus A beta, which will run to a few microohms or milliohms, right? So this is used to prevent loading effect and things like that. So let me demonstrate all the 3 experiments now, and let me explain the circuit setup that we have here. And it is on this breadboard that I made all the 3 circuit connections. We have the inverting connections made here, we have the non-inverting amplifier made here, and also we have the buffer circuit here. And this is the kind of power supply we require. As you can notice here, this is plus 15 and minus 15 with reference to a common signal. So we connect the plus 15 to all the 7 shorted. Pin number 7 of 741 is the plus VCC input, and the minus is connected to all the 4 shorted, that will be minus VEE. That is available with reference to common, so therefore this common is also grounded here. So then I have used a function generator here using which I can apply an AC input, and I have CRO to which I have connected both the input and the output of this particular circuit just to demonstrate the phase shift as well as the amplification that it is showing. Yeah, because this is a very simple experiment, it will hardly take any time for me to explain, and I think I have applied an input around 2.17 kilohertz of frequency. As you can see now, you have an input signal that is on channel 1 of the CRO and output on the channel 2 of the CRO. So output is 10 times your input signal because I have designed an amplifier with a gain of 10. So let me just do one thing. If I just increase or decrease the input amplitude, you can see a proportional increase in the output amplitude, right? So let me not measure it, but even if I measure it, if it is somewhere around 0.2 volt, this will be around 2 volts because the gain has been given as 10. Just notice one thing here. This is my input signal. So whenever we are in a negative half cycle, we will have the output as a positive half cycle because this particular inverting amplifier produces a phase shift of 180 degree. And so that's about this basic experiment. And if you vary the frequency also, I don't see any much change except the time period variation because of the display device. But amplitude wise, it will be performing satisfactorily within the gain bandwidth limitations of the particular op-amp, which we know for 7th phone is runs into 1 megahertz or so. So that's about this experiment. So I have demonstrated that the output will be 10 times your input, and also it will have a phase shift of 180 degree because of the output being equals to minus RF by R1 into V, right? So with this, let me just make a small circuit connection change. All I'll do is, currently I've connected the input to the inverting amplifier. I'll connect it to the non-inverting amplifier and just show you what difference it is going to make you. So let me remove the inputs from the inverting amplifier and then give it to the plus input of the non-inverting amplifier, and also connect the output of the CRO to the non-inverting amplifier. Try to watch the change in the output. Yeah, as you can see here, as far as the amplitude is concerned, it is still 10 times because I have designed both the circuits for a gain of 10. But just notice one thing here, that is whenever the input is positive, the output is also positive, and whenever the input is negative, the output also is negative. because this particular circuit gives a gain of 1 plus RF by R1 into Vin, which will be equals to 11 in this particular case, right? So if my input is 0.1 volt, the output will be 1.1 volt if we can measure it. But I have already measured it earlier before making this demonstration. But we should design the gain for a gain of 10. It will not be exactly equal to 10, probably because of the tolerances in the resistor, but it will be approximately equal to 10. You can always take 10 readings and take out what is the average gain of your given circuit, right? Yeah, so this is the non-inverting amplifier. As you can see, the output will be of the same phase as the input, but it is amplifying a signal by a gain of 11 because I have used RF and R1 in such values that the gain is equals to 11. I'm just demonstrating with an AC supply, and in the actual manual I have shared with you, I have given the DC values, but the same thing is true also. If I change the AC signal generator to the DC also, the same thing is going to happen. For plus input, I'll have minus output, and for minus input, I'll have plus input for the inverting, and for the non-inverting, the output polarities will be same, right? Yeah, so that's about the second application, the non-inverting. I had demonstrated the amplification also, and this also. Just notice one thing here, but if I excessively increase the input, it tries to go to the saturation after a certain value, because we know that the op amp cannot exceed a certain value. So just look what I am doing here. It's an inverting amplifier. All I am trying to do is I am trying to excessively increase the input magnitude. I have shown in the class that your output cannot be greater than plus or minus Vsat, and because I have applied an excessive input, maybe more than 2 volts or 3 volts, your output is getting limited to plus Vsat or minus Vsat, which will go out once you reduce the amplitude. See here, for this value, it is within the limits. It is within the limits. If I increase the value beyond a certain value, it is going to go to the saturation. See, it is within the limits. Let me go on increasing. See, now I have designed it for a gain of 11, but my input is within the limits of V0 being less than or equal to plus or minus Vsat. So therefore, for a sine wave input, you have got a sine wave output also. But if I increase the input voltage, you can see that the output cannot go beyond the plus or minus 15 saturation level. So therefore, it will go to saturation, right? I mean, don't think it as a sine wave to square wave converter. That's a very bad way of doing a thing. So because my input is excessively large, it is going and hitting the saturation limits. So therefore, I'm getting these values, unfortunately, right? Yeah. So let me reduce the input, and you'll be already in the linear region. In fact, I have shown this as a transfer function in the class, that it will be linear like this, then it will go to saturation. So that's what is happening. So that's about the second experiment of the non-inverting amplifier. So now let me show you a buffer circuit. All I'll do is I'll change the input to the buffer circuit and also the output. So just watch your input and output. First thing is they are in phase because V0 is equals to Vi for a buffer circuit magnitude wise. So you can just notice that my Vin is exactly equals to V0, and there is no phase shift also, because that's what a buffer circuit will do, and your V0 is same as Va, right? Hope you can appreciate that. And also there is no phase shift in this particular circuit. If you find out the peak to peak value of input and output, they will be exactly same. Because it's a buffer circuit. So let me try to teach you something else here. What I'll do here is I'll try to increase the frequency, right? I have got sine wave input applied. So let me try to increase the frequency and try to demonstrate what is happening. See what happened now? Your input is fantastic. It is still a sine wave, but you can just watch that the output is no more a sine wave. Why is it happening? I have taught you in the theory class that your op amp cannot slew you beyond certain limits, right? So whenever you try to apply an excessive frequency to this, here it is fine. He is happy to slew at that particular rate. But if I try to increase the frequency beyond a certain limit, you can see what happens is the output will no more be able to slew, and you will start becoming a triangular waveform. Because in a given time, your op amp cannot slew beyond 0.7 volt per microsecond for an LM7 for an op amp. So that's it. So in this experiment, I have demonstrated the inverting amplifier, the non-inverting amplifier, and also a special application of the non-inverting amplifier, which is called as a buffer. all the three cases I've demonstrated. And also I taught you what happens when you cross the certain frequency values. We have learned something called as full power bandwidth in the theory class. Slew rate is equal to 2 pi f max into V naught peak to peak. So applying the same thing, your output will get into distorted output is what we have called it as in the theory class. So for any frequency less than f max, you will have undistorted output like this. For very large frequency like this, you will have a distorted output like this, which is not a favored condition, right? So with this, I have demonstrated the experiment, and so that's it. So with this, after this, let us move on to the next experiment, in which I'll be demonstrating the voltage to current converter, both for the grounded load and the floating load circuit. Yes, we'll move to the next experiment. We will now demonstrate the second experiment, which is based on V to I converter, also called as a voltage controlled current source. And let me demonstrate two circuits here. One is for a floating load and the other is for a grounded load. As we have learned in the theory class, the V to I converter for for floating load is a special application of a non-inverting amplifier, in which the input is connected to the plus input, and we have R1 connected here, that is being grounded. And now the resistor, which was feedback resistor in the non-inverting amplifier, will now become the load resistor RL here. And as we have learned, the current here is established by the ratio of this V in and R. So I have chosen some variable V in, and then R is equals to 1K. So if this is 5K, this is 5 volts, then by 1K will be 5 milliampere. And that 5 milliampere will always flow through the RL as long as RL is less than RL max. If you make RL beyond RL max, we know that the output will hit the saturation, which we have called it as the compliance voltage of the voltage to current converter. So let me demonstrate all the three cases here. Then we'll move on to the second circuit, which is again based on the non-inverting amplifier. With all the resistors equal, here also we get the current as equals to the voltage VA divided by R, which is same for all the cases. The same concept applies, but the only difference of this circuit with reference to this is that the ground could be grounded here, the load could be grounded here, so that becomes a special application. So let me demonstrate the working of these two circuits now. Yeah, here we go. This is my power supply for the op amp, which is plus or minus 15 volts, and this is my input voltage, which currently has been kept at 5.2 volts, and this is the multimeter that will show the output voltage. I just connected the multimeter to show you the output voltage of the circuit also, and then this is the milliammeter I have connected here, which shows the value of load current IL. Notice that my RL and IL are in series. Let me first demonstrate that your output current is a function of your input voltage by a factor of 1 by 1K, because the resistor I have used here is equals to 1K. So now let me apply somewhere around 2.7 volts. So this is also around 2.7 because of the V, I and R that I have used. And if I increase the value of the input voltage, your output current is also increasing. So I have given you one set of readings in which I'll keep RL constant. So now RL is kept constant at 200 ohms. So as you increase the input voltage, the output current also will increase, governed by the same relation that IL is equals to VI divided by R, not the value of RL, because it is to be independent of the value of RL, which also I'll demonstrate. Let me increase the input voltage. Please watch the output current also increasing. If I keep it somewhere around 10 volts or so, and because I've used 1K as the current deciding resistor, this will also be around 10 milliamperes of current. So therefore there is a voltage to current conversion. So that's very simple. Now let me show you one thing in which I have randomly kept it at a voltage of say 3.3 volts, and this current will be close to 3.3 milliamperes of current. And you can see here for the given value of RL, the output voltage is equals to minus 3.96 volts. Now let me try one thing. I'll force RL equals to 0. When I force RL equals to 0, you have some output voltage, or let me say RL is equals to some 100 to 100 ohm. You have got this as the output voltage. If I vary RL around this particular value, you can see that the output voltage is going to increase, but my IL will remain constant, right? Or what happens when I force RL equals to 0? Just see. My output current is still 3.3 milliampere because the current is not decided by the value of RL. So that's what we are trying to learn in the concept of a voltage to current converter, also called as a voltage controlled current source. It is called as a current source because the value of load current is now independent of the value of RL. Let me say I'll put 200 ohm, it is still the same current, let me put some 800 ohm, it is still the same value, or let me put 1.2k, it is still the same value. But please notice, as I increase the value of RL, you can see that the output voltage is also increasing. Because as I told you, this is a special case of a non-inverting amplifier application. The output is always equals to 1 plus RF by R1. Now RL itself is working as RF. So therefore, obviously, if I increase the value of RF beyond a certain limit, the value of V0 also will keep increasing. Now I think it is around 1.4k. You can see that the output is 7.94 volts or 8 volt, and the current is constant wherever it was around 3.3 milliampere. So now let me further increase the value of RL. You can see V0 is also increasing, but the current is still constant. It is within that particular limit. Now let me say I'll put 20k. When you put 20k, it's around 12.23 volts, and it is still 3.3 amperes of current. That is constant because I have told you that IL is independent of the value of RL, of course within the practical limits. Let me further increase the value of RL. See, it has gone to 14.24 volt, and you can see that is almost constant, but probably if I go to the next value, the current will fall because I am crossing the compliance limit. You can see that, right? See here, it was in saturation. It was about to get saturation. It was close to 3.3 milliamperes of current, but as I increase the value of RL further, he has gone to deep saturation of 14.35 volt, and you can see that the current has fallen. I mean to say that you are assured of a constant load current as long as your output voltage is less than the saturation voltage limit, which we have defined in the theory class as voltage compliance of the current source. But for values anything less than that, absolutely no problem. You will be in the linear range and you have got the current back because my output voltage is less than the compliance voltage of the saturation voltage. For any value of RL less than that is constant, right? Hope I am clear. So I just demonstrated the voltage to current converter. I did two things. I showed you that the output current is a function of the input voltage. Let me again show you. Increase the input voltage, your output current also has increased. So that's the first thing I showed you. Then I kept on varying the value of RL and showed that within limits of the value of RL, your output current will be constant. But if I go to excessive values of RL, so that my compliance voltage is reached, you will try to saturate and your current will fall. So we got some kind of a response like this. The current is constant, so suddenly it will fall once you cross VL to be more than the V compliance, right? So with this we have demonstrated the first circuit of the floating load type of VTI converter. So now let me take little time to change the connection so that I can demonstrate the same circuit for a grounded load. So we'll move on to the second case of the voltage to current converter, also called as the Holland current generator. As you can see, we are applying the input voltage here and all the resistors are required to be equal. So we get a current IL which is equals to VI by R. So I have chosen R equals to 470 ohms here. So your IL will be equals to V in by 470 ohm, that will be 1 by 470 ohm, that will be approximately 2.12 milliampere. So all the resistors are required to be equal, and I get 2.12 milliamperes as the output current that is flowing through this particular grounded resistor, and I am measuring the VL across this particular RL, and let me tell you what that particular value will be. Yeah. So as you can see, the input voltage is around 1 volt and you have a current up to 2.1 milliamperes or so, and we kept RL to be around say 100 ohm. So I got this as the output voltage, which is 0.478 volt. So if I increase the input voltage, again the output current will increase. This is the first table what we have understood, keeping RL as constant, increasing V in and noting the different values of IL to demonstrate that your IL is equals to V in divided by 470 ohm in the example that I showed you. So that is about the demonstration of the V to I converter for all the grounded loads. This is grounded now, right? Because I have taken this wire and that is being grounded. And now let me show you what is my V0. So as you can see here, for the same value of current, if I increase the value of RL, my V0 is going to increase. So within the limit again, you are sure of the particular current. Here also you are sure because it is around 9 ampere or so. But if I go to very large values in which the op amp tries to go to saturation, you can see the variation in the current. It is no more within a particular limit and the current will fall to 0. The same concept will apply for this circuit also. So for values of RL more than RL max, your output voltage will go to the compliance voltage. So therefore your circuit will no more be able to work as a voltage to current converter. But for values beyond that, you will be able to comfortably work. Notice that my output is 6.6 volts now, so therefore I have got a larger current. If I just bring it back to 1 volt, like what I started the experiment with, you will still have around 2.12 milliamperes of current, right? So with this I have demonstrated two concepts of two different circuits realizing a voltage to current converter for two different kinds of loads. Also I demonstrated what happens if you increase the values of RL beyond a certain limit, you will fail to work as a current source. So for all practical circuits we will have something called as RL max. We should never cross that. It's only below RL equals to RL max that your circuit will be able to comply with the requirement of providing the load with a constant current given by V by R, right? So with this we are done with this experiment. I think now we will move on to the third experiment, again for a DC application, in which we will demonstrate the principle of the instrumentation amplifier, what we have learned in the theory. So let me demonstrate the third experiment, which is a DC application of the op-amp for the application of amplifying differential signal, which we have discussed at length in the theory class, calling it one of the most important amplifier for all instrumentation amplification application. So therefore called as instrumentation amplifier very rightly. So I have two circuits here. They are typically same, but the difference is as follows. For the first circuit, as you can see here, I have used two power supply here, power supply 1 and power supply 2, only to create a differential voltage to be applied between this plus and this plus of the thing. And in the second circuit, I have shorted both the plus inputs of the instrumentation amplifier that are being given to one common input voltage, just to demonstrate what output voltage do I get when I apply common mode signal. So we know that ideally an op-amp, an instrumentation amplifier device, is supposed to have infinite value of differential gain and almost zero common mode gain, so that will make CMRR is infinity. But it's a very humble, simple setup I have made here, and just to make things simpler, because as you go to higher values of gain, it will become a little unstable, and these loose wires may create some problem. So I just designed the circuit for a gain of 3, but for all practical application, we will design instrumentation amplifier not for 3 at all, at least for a gain of 100, 500,000 and so on and so forth. But just for demonstration, I have designed the amplifier for a gain of 3 here. So let me demonstrate what gain do I get when I apply differential input for this case, and show you the output also when I apply common mode signal. So obviously here the output voltage should be equals to gain times your input differential signal, and here the output voltage should be as less as possible even for a common mode voltage, so that we get some reasonable value of common mode rejection ratio, which should be for a case like this at least 60 to 70 decibel is what I should get. When you buy an instrumentation amplifier chip, of course it will have 100 plus or 110 decibel or so as the CMRR. So with this background, let me demonstrate these two experiments. And as earlier, I have used a differential power supply plus or minus 15 volts power supply to the op-amp, and this is my V1 and this is my V2. I'll vary both V1 and V2 so that I can apply a different kind of differential input to the device, and we have a digital multimeter that is being connected to the output terminals. So right now I have got around say 0.8 volt for this value of 0.3 and 0.5, but we can never truly take this as very accurate values, because these are what are called as a digital panel meters, which will not be very accurate, but approximately you can get a feel of what happens when V1 and V2 are varied and how the output voltage will vary, which is approximately equals to 3 times that. So right now it is 0.5 and this is 0.3, the difference is 0.2. 0.2 into 3 should be around 0.6, but I'm getting 0.755 because I'm not reading anything beyond the second decimal point or so. So though it is showing 0.3, it could be 0.32, 0.34 or whatever. So therefore there is some difference, but you can see the correlation between V1 minus V2 and your output voltage. Let me further increase the value of V1, and you can see that output voltage is increasing further, because my V1 minus V2 is increasing. So for this value of gain, it is around 2.1 and this is 0.3, so that will be 1.8 into 3. So that should be the output voltage, which is approximately equal to that. But as I told you already, the DPMs may not be very, very accurate. If I use one more digital multimeter to measure both my V1 and V2, and considering the tolerance of the various resistors, I'll get AD, which is approximately equal to the value of 3. So if I vary V2 also, that will vary. Let me do one thing. Now V1 I'll reduce and try to increase V2, and you can see that my output voltage is negative now, because the gain of the instrumentation always is equals to RF by R1 into 1 plus 2 R2 by RG into V1 minus V2. So it is always V1 minus V2. When V2 is more than V1, obviously that V1 minus V2 itself will become negative, giving a negative voltage, right? So you get some 1 volt, 2 volt, etc. the output voltage as where the differential input voltage, but the gain will be approximately equal to 3, right? So that's how I demonstrate the differential mode of an operation, in which I apply both V1 and V2 to the instrumentation amplifier, and I get V0 as the differential output voltage, which is V1 minus V2 multiplied by the differential gain of the amplifier, right? So with this, let me move on to make a small change in the circuit connection, so that I'll configure it for a common mode signal and show you that this will never be in volts now, it will be in some kind of a millivolts, because the common mode gain of this particular amplifier is very smaller. So let me take a while to change the connection. So continuing with the instrumentation amplifier demonstration, let me go to the common mode circuit now. I had just demonstrated the differential mode circuit in which V1 minus V2 was amplified by a fact of the differential gain, which was basically designed for a gain of 3. In the second circuit, what I have done is I have shorted the plus input and plus input of A1 and A2 circuits, because I want to apply common mode input voltage with a DC power supply like this. And let me show that the output voltage will be extremely small now, because the common mode gain, which should be ideally 0, may be in the range of a few milli or micro or whatever. That is one thing I demonstrate. But also in the class I have taught you that the first stage of the amplifier, which is called as a differential input differential output amplifier, will unfortunately have a common mode gain value of equals to 1. So most of the differential gain is provided by the second thing, or the common mode rejection is achieved by the second stage, because the first stage has a common mode gain of 1. Meaning that by the concept of virtual short, the voltage at minus input will also be equal to the plus input. So therefore, suppose if I applied say around 5.2 volt as the input voltage, I'll show you that this will also be equals to 5.2 volt, and this will also be equals to 5.2 volt, because this offers a common mode gain of equals to 1. So that is the first thing I'll demonstrate, then show you that the output will be in the range of millivolts to get as a large value of CMRR. So as you can see here, my input is around 5.3 volts. So now let me show you the output voltage of the first op amp, or the A1 stage. So please watch it out, that is also around 5.3 volts. So my input voltage is 5.3 volts and output is also 5.3 volts, because the A1 will have a common mode gain of equals to 1. Similarly, the A2 will also have a common mode gain of 1, because my input is 5.2 or 3, my output will also be approximately the same value. Yes, you can see I am talking about the output signals of A1 and A2, which will be same as your input voltage. So therefore, I have demonstrated that the first stage will have a common mode gain of 1, because you will pass it as it is to the output, because of the virtual short configuration what you learned in the theory class. So that is one concept I have proved. Now let me try to measure my output voltage when the input voltage is very large, somewhere around 5.2 volt. It chose to be 0 because I am in the volts range. So let me move to the millivolts range. Yeah, so you can see that though I have applied a 5.2 volt as the input voltage, you can see that the output voltage is just 7.5 millivolt, right? So if I further increase this to say around 7.6 volt, it has gone up to 10.8 millivolt or so. So now the gain of this is 10 millivolt divided by 7.5, which will be something like 0.00 something. So therefore this will offer a common mode gain, ideally 0, but practically a few milli of gain, and the differential gain is very large. So when you find the CMRR is 20 log of 80 by AC, your output voltage, your CMRR will be around 60 to 70 decibel for a loosely wired circuit like this. For an IH chip, it will be at least 110 decibel or so, right? So with this, we have completed the demonstration of the instrumentation amplifier as the fourth application of the DC application of the op amp. So with this, I am done. Let me move on to another circuit in which I will be demonstrating some AC applications of op amps as low pass and high pass filters, both in the first and second order. So let me see how best I can demonstrate the low pass and high pass filter applications in the next experiment. Yeah, so we'll go to the fourth application of the op amp, which is an AC application. We have learned enough of these circuits in the theory class, but I'm just giving an experimental demonstration. The first circuit is a low pass filter, active filter. As you can see here, there is an R here and a C here, and the gain could be anything for a low pass filter. So that will have a roll-off rate of minus 20 decibel per decade, which I'll first demonstrate. Then I'll add two RC sections. The second C is grounded, but the first C is given back to the output, which we have called it as a Sallen-Key configuration in the theory class discussions. So this will have minus 40 decibel per decade, and because we wanted the Butterworth response, the gain should be equals to 1.58. So if you can watch it out, this is equals to 10K and my RF is equals to 5.86K, and because it's an non-inverting amplifier, the gain becomes 1 plus RF by R1. So that I think will be equals to 1.586 is the gain of the particular amplifier, right? So let me first demonstrate the application of op amps as a low pass active filter first order and a second order active low pass filter. And now as far as the setup is considered, this is where we have the circuits. So I have constructed both the circuits. The first is a low pass filter and the second is also a low pass filter, but of the first order and the second order. And we have powered the op amp with plus or minus 15 volt power supply. And here I have used a function generator so that I can apply an AC input. And what you can see, as the first waveform on top of it is my input signal, and this is my output signal. I want to see how the output voltage will reduce as a function of frequency. So therefore, I am displaying the input and output waveform both. As I increase the frequency, because it's a low pass filter, my input voltage will remain constant, but the output voltage peak to peak value will reduce after a certain value of frequency. And at the cutoff frequency of FC, I think, which is equals to 1 kilohertz, the gain will be equals to 0.707 times the maximum gain. Yeah. So now let me go to a very low frequency here. So as you can see here, my output voltage is some amplified version of the input voltage, and it's very linear also. So now even if I increase the frequency will increase, but as far as amplitude is concerned, it will remain the constant, right? So whether it is this frequency or this frequency, it is trying to remain constant. So let me extend the frequency now to some other value. Yeah, see here, this is my input that will always remain constant. My output voltage will also be constant initially because I'm talking about a low pass filter, which, as you know, will have a constant Butterworth response, flat pass band. So then it will roll off at a rate of minus 20 decibel per decade. Let me further increase the frequency and see what happens. Even now it is almost constant, but is slowly reducing. So let me go to the next frequency value. You will see that the output voltage will start reducing. Can you notice that? Yeah. So this was my output. This is my output voltage. As I increase the frequency, you can see that the output voltage is further reducing. The more the frequency, the more the reduction in the output voltage. And once your V0 is much smaller than your input voltage, so obviously the circuit is not able to give the gain. So we'll have the pass band gain, and as you move to the stop band, so this is a process in which is going to the stop band slowly. Is going to the stop band because my output voltage amplitude is becoming much smaller than the input voltage magnitude, right? So with this, I have demonstrated a first order low pass filter. Even if I go to the further high frequency, please notice my output voltage will reduce. It will go to a very, very small value. We are almost in the stop band, right? So let me just come in the reverse direction. We are almost in the pass band. Now he is going to the stop band. He is entirely in the stop band. As you can see here, your output voltage is much smaller, right? Therefore, I demonstrated a first order low pass filter. All low frequencies are passed to the output. All low frequencies are passed to the output, but as I go to the high frequency, it will get attenuated. See? Yeah. The readings I have given you because in a demonstration, taking reading for every frequency value will be very time consuming. So therefore, you are not making any recordings. The readings already I have shared with you anyway. Here it's only a demonstration of the principle of operation, right? Yeah. So now let me move on to the second order low pass filter. I have just made a small change that I have changed my inputs and outputs from the first circuit to the second circuit, meaning that I have moved from the first order low pass filter to the second order low pass filter. But as far as the demonstration thing is considered, you will still observe the same thing, that at very low frequencies, your output will be input times the gain of that. But as you go to the high frequency, it is still constant because I am still in the pass band gain. So now let me go to the next high frequency. So now please observe one thing. It is going to reduce little faster because see here, earlier it was little sluggish because the slope was minus 20 decibel per decade, but now that the rate is minus 40 decibel per decade, see after this frequency you will fall at a much faster rate, right? Which was little slow in the previous case, but here it will happen at a much faster rate thanks to the minus 40 decibel per decade of the second order. So in the low pass filter you had a flat pass band and the gain was decreasing later. Now I'll just swap the R and C of the circuit so that it will become high pass filter, and I'll show you that initially when the frequencies are lower than the cutoff frequency, the output will be very weak or much smaller than the input voltage, but as you go to the pass band, your output voltage will be gain times the input voltage. So now let me demonstrate the high pass filter circuits. Having demonstrated the low pass filter in which you had a flat pass band, then it was going down. Just notice here I have swapped the C and R, and again we will have C1, C2, R1, R2, both of them to be equal. So this is a first order low pass high pass filter in which you will have a slope of plus 20 dB per decade initially, and then you will go to the pass band. So we will have the stop band first here followed by the pass band, whereas for a low pass filter we had the pass band first followed by the stop band. The same thing true for the second order also, but for that the rate of rise of the gain will be plus 40 decibel per decade. So now if I demonstrate, you can see that whenever I am in the lower frequency regime, your output will be close to 0. As I increase a particular frequency, your output voltage should gradually increase at the given slope of either plus 20 decibel per decade or at the rate of plus 40 decibel per decade. So then you will go and stabilize and stay at a value in the pass band such that your output will be equals to your input value multiplied by the gain of that. For this it could be any gain. For this we have to choose 1.586 for the reason that we want a very flat pass band, which is nothing but the Butterworth response, and I have taught you all these concepts of taking the damping factor from the Butterworth polynomial table. So that's a different theory concept. I'm just demonstrating the 2 experiment. So let me just demonstrate as an example a simple first order high pass filter. As you can see here, it is a lot of fluctuating. Why? Because I have applied a very low frequency signal, because I want to show you that the output voltage is approximately equal to 0, because there is no passing of that, or we are in the stop band. So now as I increase the frequency value, you can see that is slowly increasing, right? So that means I am slowly going to the frequency is just 31.16 hertz, in which you almost have 0 output voltage. But as I increase the input voltage, input frequency, your output voltage is increasing now, or I am going towards the pass band. So now let me further increase the frequency. So you can see that is adequately in the pass band and is passing the frequency. So now I am fully in the pass band, right? So whenever the frequency is very low, so I'll be in the stop band, your output is much smaller than the input voltage, and as you go to the pass band, your output will be gain times your input voltage, because I'm in the pass band, right? So therefore initially it was 0, then it increased at a slope, so then it remained constant value, right? Yeah, so with this I have demonstrated the high pass filter, but let me teach you one thing. What happens if I further increase the frequency, right? So here also I'm further increasing the frequency, it is constant, but just see one thing. I'll further increase the frequency, and you can see the output voltage reducing. You can ask me a question now, sir, you taught us a high pass filter in which it is supposed to move from the stop band to the pass band. That is, you had a response like this, in which it was stop band, then it increased, and then went to the pass band. But that's fantastic. So that is what it is supposed to do, right? So it's doing it. But if I further increase the frequency, you can see that your output voltage is reducing. So you can ask me, why is it happening? In fact, it is happening somewhere around 50 to 60 kilohertz. I have told you one concept in the theory class, but that the op amp will have what are called as the gain bandwidth or the slew rate limitations. So it will not be able to slew beyond a certain frequencies. So therefore, this circuit will have a practical limit. As you try to increase this frequency further, so he may fall like this. It is not due to the frequency response of the filter, that is due to the inherent limitation of the op amp to obey anything beyond a certain frequency. Sorry for the limitations of the op amp due to the slew rate, or could be the gain and bandwidth product. So that's the reason why it goes like this. In fact, honestly speaking, all amplifiers are band pass filters like this, because they will have something called as a lower cutoff frequency, they will have something called as a higher cutoff frequency, or FH, between which only you will have a pass band as a particular signal, right? Yeah. So that's what I showed you here. So typically it's a low pass, high pass filter only, but after a certain value of frequency, it will again fall because of the limitation of the op amp, right? Yeah. So with this we have demonstrated the low pass and high pass filters also. So that's about this experiment which showed you how we can obtain different frequency responses. And as I mentioned in the theory class, it's only in the laboratory that we apply, that we take a standard signal generator like this, using which we apply the sine waves very smoothly. But instead of this, if you take any signal from the real world, so that real world will have a mix of these frequencies. So the purpose of these filters is to attenuate or de-emphasize the frequencies that you don't want and emphasize only the frequency components that you want, which becomes the actual application of the filters, special applications of active filters for various applications, especially in the field of biomedical signal, which will have multiple kind of frequency components coming from the real world signals, right? Yes, with this we are done with this. So with this we demonstrated 5 to 6 experiments which typically were about the linear or analog applications of the op-amps as the basic amplifiers first, and followed by the V2I converters. So then we looked at the instrumentation amplifier, and then finally the low pass and high pass filter, both on the second order. Hope you have got a feel of it. For any doubt you can always write to me and I'll be more than happy to answer your queries. So with this, I wish you all the very best, and I'll be failing in my duties if I don't thank Mr. Pandurang Kulkarni, who's the instructor of the lab, who helped me to rig up all the circuits. So thank you very much, Kulkarni. And of course, I should also honestly thank Mr. Anil Venkatesh for the wonderful video recording as always. Thank you. God bless.